The other day, I was on the game and I had a podcast on in the background, but I realized I'd been tuning it out for like 20 minutes, just immersed in my thoughts instead. And when I emerged from my daze, I looked at the YouTube tab playing this thing and I just had the feeling of like, what the fuck am I doing? So in shame, I closed my laptop and just played Black Ops 2 with the audio on instead and like listened to the game instead. And the craziest part of the whole thing was that the people who were doing this podcast that I was listening to kind of seemed to be like over it as well. Like they started it by going, I'm completely unprepared. We're going to lose viewers. But just kept going. And the vibe I picked up on was that they both thought it was funny that they're putting out such a shit podcast. I think these dudes are part of a media company, which means they're probably obligated to put one out every week. And it genuinely kind of seemed like they were just being forced to sit down and podcast for 2 hours, which is so fucking funny. But also, like, it was depressing in the moment. Like, I was just like, what is going on, man? Like, I'm meant to be unenthusiastic about this because I'm wasting my life away while listening to your shit. But the whole time, like, you're just as not into this as I am. Like, if I don't want to be here and you don't want to be here, what the fuck are we doing? Not to mention, like, the 4 or 5 ad breaks for BetterHelp and, like, BetMGM and shit. Which at that point I was just like, holy shit, bro, like, what are we doing? Even the podcasters are mentally checked out of this and they probably know that that's actually fine because people are only going to listen to this on a second tab or like as background noise on a long drive. And that got me thinking about what the optimal setting for a podcast actually is because it's basically never entertaining enough to be the main thing you're doing, but it's somehow addictive at the same time. In COVID, I'd play some like mindless game like Dead Island Riptide with the express purpose of having a podcast on at the same time. It was like a low stimulation, mildly interesting, mildly entertaining, like nothing state that I could like enter into. And then it got to like if I'm walking to the supermarket or if I'm on the train or if I'm driving or whatever, like I might as well have a podcast on. And then I just had background noise to like any like slightly boring activity that I was doing ever. And what's weird is that neither of these things, like a podcast isn't good enough on its own, but it only makes sense when you pair it with something boring, which is just like odd. I think that was really the depths of my insanity because like if you pitched me that I was going to play a mid game while listening to a mid podcast, but like together it would be almost a good experience, but like actually it wasn't, I would just be like, why would I ever do that? But I did do that a lot in COVID. Isn't the image of that funny? Like, there's a bunch of guys reluctantly making and uploading mid podcasts and videos because they want money. And then on the other end, there's a bunch of guys half listening to these podcasts while they waste their life away on Borderlands 3. I know it's not as bad as that, and that there are like informative or genuinely funny podcasts out there, but like, compared to just enjoying the process of focusing on what you're doing, or like following a train of thought or like making plans for later or whatever. A lot of these podcasts don't come close at all to just doing one of those things. Like if you can just chill with your thoughts and maybe like write some shit down in the notes on the train instead of listening to someone yap in your ear or you know try and figure something out about your life or plan what you're doing tomorrow, whatever. That's a way better podcast you can have with yourself than some bullshit you have on the second tab. I do randomly have a soft spot for like a mid podcast though. I don't listen to Well, part of it is that most of the most popular podcasts are just as mid as the low view podcasts anyway. Like, I probably couldn't get through like a Joe Rogan without having some like other mid real life activity to be doing. There was a time in high school though where I was really into like the GameSpot podcast and the Screen Junkies podcast. And I think my podcast like fetish might be like a bunch of coworkers at a media company having to perform podcast talk to each other. And then I kind of wonder about what their day-to-day life looks like. Like what's it like to work at IGN? I think there's something interesting about like having to go to an office every day, but and you're like on a 9 to 5, but you're going there to record Assassin's Creed footage and then talk about the Game Awards on a film studio podcast with other 40-year-olds whose lives also revolve around gaming. Whatever, I'm getting sidetracked though. There is another aspect to the dark side of podcasts, which is that we use them to keep ourselves company because they basically simulate being part of a conversation. Except when you're listening to a podcast, you don't actually have to do anything. Like, you don't have to contribute to the conversation at all. So it becomes like an addicting alternative to real life conversations where you have to be thinking of what to say next and you risk saying the wrong thing or getting the convo dry and, all that shit. And if you are listening to podcasts or watching YouTube in order to satiate yourself socially, which I've fucking been there, it's important to just like chill on that and see how that feels without the stimulation of a podcast. Like you probably will feel a bit lonely, but you actually do need that feeling in order to motivate you to seek other people in your life and like a better social life. Like everyone needs a social life. You can't just replace that with a fucking podcast. It feels so much better, like infinitely better to hang out with people in real life and form connections with real people than like simulate a hangout with podcasts. But everyone fucking knows that. Like, do you ever emerge from a social media mukbang and you have to go to work or see a friend or something and you get like a tight feeling in your chest, like all of a sudden I have anxiety? Like, I don't think that's meant to be there, bro. And it's like your body is telling you that the podcast you watch and the fucking videos you watched were something very different to like actually being with people. Even though a social media addiction is, I think, a way of like coping with loneliness. But it's just a shit way to cope. Like, it doesn't fucking do it. I was just thinking, like, what if my dream job still is working at IGN? But then I just thought it through more, and it like definitely isn't. Like, my near complete lack of interest in games, like modern games, would be visible in my eyes, and I could maybe force myself to be interested and like really get into it, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I think the soullessness of what I was doing would be visible on camera. And also like I don't think the guys on IGN podcasts have been working there for like 6 years, or like you have to like grind up the ladder and probably like backstab your game journalist co-workers to even get to that point, and then you can be sort of unsatisfied on like visibly unsatisfied on a podcast. So it's probably not worth it. But another random way that podcasts have affected my shit is sometimes I have like I've clearly just listened to way too much of like a comedy podcast or like a kind of silly podcast, and then I'll internalize that as like the normal way to have a conversation. And then I'll say shit to people that like would totally fly on a podcast, but in real life it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then I just like I come off like an insane person. So I think that I don't know if that's actually relatable, but I've had that like many times. Like I've expected zingers, dude, and then it's just like blank fluoride stare. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's actually really sad, honestly. Honestly, it might be time to quit listening to podcasts for a bit, bro. Like, if I walk to the store without a podcast on, I usually will end up in like a chill train of thought that makes me like realize something or remember something or get an idea for something I want to do. And I'm trading that for like, yeah, just like a convo that I will forget in an hour that they don't even want to post. So it's like, I don't know, what am I doing? Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, guys, but make sure to see people and hang out with people in real life. And if you're feeling naughty on a long drive, maybe throw a podcast on if you really have to, but just know that you might miss a life-changing idea because you are distracting yourself. Also, shout out IGN and shout out GameSpot. Peace.